Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcast. You're watching on YouTube. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Ampire Media. That's Ampire. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Well, today I told you I was going to be joined by ESPN draft analyst Jordan Reed. Well, we had to change the schedule around a little bit because he was unavailable to tape on Tuesday. So we pushed it back to later in the week, and I'll run that early next week. But I will bring him on to go over the Commanders draft and kind of get you an outside perspective, a national perspective of the players that Washington selected and in everything that goes along with that. So today I wanted to bring you an audio interview that I did with Ron Rivera. And so if you're watching on YouTube, you can still listen to it here. It's 7.5 minutes long, and it's all about Sam Howell. And I wanted to, it was the basis of the story I wrote on ESPN.com over the weekend, explaining to people who still, I think, were surprised that they're really going with Sam Howell. Well, yeah, and here's why. And so we get into all that with Rivera. Just understand that I recorded this in a hotel lobby out in Arizona at the owners' meetings. So we're sitting on a little couch, and at one point, Rivera's voice gets a little bit fainter, but you can still hear it. It's a little bit fainter because he gets up off the couch to demonstrate the footwork that Howell had to improve upon and where he was at before and where he was at now, why it made a difference, et cetera. So he gets up to demonstrate some of that. That's why it gets a little bit harder to hear. So I'm just preempting the complaints because they always, whatever. So social media. But anyway, just understand that. And, one of the things that is hard for us on the outside is to always know what is the footwork supposed to be on a particular route. And I think, and one of the things he does is explain how it mattered and where it made a difference. And you could see it in the Baltimore finale. For example, there was a play where Chris Paul gets pushed back into his lap. Well, Chris Paul, and anybody who watched, Chris Paul, lost his battle. Well, the reality was Howell had to get deeper on the play, and he did not. And so it disrupts the timing of the route, and he's sitting there waiting for a guy to get open about several yards in front of where he should be, and leads to a sack. So things like that, where that's some of the progress he made throughout the year. And it's how it manifested itself in the Dallas game. Some of the plays that he made, we go over a couple of the plays he made, just why why it gives him confidence going forward. One of the things we didn't talk about was, how after the interception that he threw, that he came back out pretty strong. But when he came to the sidelines after the pick, the first thing he told Rivera is what he did wrong. And that resonated with the coach because he understood where the mistakes were. And one of the things that Howell's going to have to be really good at this year is taking care of the ball, because one of the reasons they picked Emmanuel Forbes was to change that turnover margin. They understand how important that turnover margin is to winning and losing. It starts with taking the ball away more times. They only had 9 interceptions last year. I think it's the last 2 years, it's 20 combined. And that's like either 28th or 29th in the NFL. It's bad. So they want to take the ball away more, but they also got to give it away less. And that goes back to Howell, and that's going to be part of his development. The good thing for this team is if Howell doesn't progress the way they want him to, then you have Jacoby Brissett behind him, a veteran who can come in, I think would be a good fit with what they have here if Howell shows that he's not progressing. Now, as far as his progress, Brissett should be ahead of him before when they get out to the spring, because he's played. He's played a lot. But the key will be, what does Howell look like at the end of May? What does he look like in minicamp? What does he look like when they come back for training camp? How does he progress? Because if he doesn't show the progress, then you can turn to Brissett. So that's one of the things we get into. A couple other things. There's also the Andrew Luck situation. And listen, I'm the one who put out there that they certainly had considered him during this whole process. Now, they did not call him. I had that in the initial article last week. They did not call him. That shouldn't have been written that way. And so that got fixed. And that was my doing. So, but it got fixed because I knew that didn't happen. But it's led to this other situation with Irsay pushing the league to now investigate it. I will say this team feels pretty good about where it's at. What I do know is last year, the whole point of including him in there was to show the due diligence that they did in going after a quarterback last year and how different it was this year, to the point where last year they even wondered about this guy or did whatever. And so they didn't call Luck based on people I talked to. They didn't call his agent. So it really never went anywhere far. And so that's why I don't think that this investigation will go anywhere. And certainly Does seem like Irsay was pushing for it. So, but again, this team feels pretty good about what they did and how they handled it. It was just that when you're looking at a quarterback and here's a guy that's like, hey, what about this guy? And then, quickly he gets crossed out, he gets crossed off the list because you realize, well, he's obviously still retired and the Colts have the rights, blah, blah, blah. So move on. Anyway, that's one thing. And then one of the things you need to know is that on May 10th, which is Wednesday, the NFL Finance Committee will be meeting in New York. It's part of a regularly scheduled meeting. It would, clearly the Commander's situation would be a part of a discussion. I don't know if Josh Harris will be there to present to the group. At one point, I had seen it reported that he would. Talked to somebody last week where they weren't sure that he would. So I don't know. If I find out tomorrow, I'll put it on social media. But, you do wonder, what does that lead, the fact that they're meeting, again, a scheduled meeting ahead of the meetings later this month in Minnesota. So this is not like it was done just for the sale. This is part of what they always do. But could it lead to some updates for the Commander's sale? So that's something you should stay tuned as well. And then, of course, on Thursday is the NFL schedule release. I'm not Kevin Sheehan. I'm not going to do a mock schedule prediction here. I will remind you, in addition to the division foes, at home, they play Arizona, San Francisco, Buffalo, Miami, Chicago. Sounds like a tough schedule. On the road, it's the Rams, Seattle, Patriots, Jets, Falcons, and Denver. So it is a on paper, looks like a challenging schedule. And that's why this team has to get off to a good start. So there you go. We'll figure all that stuff out on Thursday. I'm not going to do a podcast after the schedule comes out because I'm going to be doing one on Friday after we have a chance to watch the rookie mini camp, the rookies for the first time, get our first look at Emmanuel Forbes, Martin, all those guys, Stromberg, Rodriguez, KJ Henry, all that group, and all the undrafted free agents as well. So, and we'll also be on the field and see, how does an Eric Bieniemy, what kind of energy and impact does he make with those rookies? I'm going to be talking about Bieniemy in 1 minute. But anyway, I'll have a podcast that comes out Friday night because we're going to be out there. The practice won't end until around 3. We're not going to get done with interviews until around 5:45. So I'm going to record one after that and put it out there for you, just with some impressions of what we saw and heard during that rookie mini camp workout. So that's it. And now I told you about Bieniemy. So I wanted to just talk about him for a minute because I think, and I'm going to harp on this because people keep talking about the offense. Understandably, it's been bad. We've all seen it. We know how bad it's been for too long. But the biggest impact I think that they have, or the biggest impact someone can make, could be Bieniemy. I think that's such a poorly structured and stated sentence. So I apologize. I think Bieniemy could have a big impact. How's that? That's a better way to say it. Because of what he can add. It's the attention to detail. It's the demanding nature that he has. It's the energy that he brings. And, play calling gets a lot of attention by everybody because, like, you can see it. We all see the plays that they work. It's a great play. This guy's plays usually work. Hey, it's great. Could be the quarterback just makes a play, right? But it's also in adherence to details. So sometimes these plays, you would see some plays not work because a guy might take a wrong step. A guy might run a wrong route or not run it to the right depth. It's going to happen. It's not like everybody that has a good offense is so great and everybody does it, but there is an adherence to details that makes a difference. And I think that's kind of been a little bit lacking here, to be honest. And I think that's one thing that is in Bieniemy's wheelhouse. So how does that play out? If receivers are not getting to the right depth all the time, well, you have a guy, I think, that's going to let it be known that you have to get to this depth because this is the reputation he has. All that's a big deal. The other part of it is too, and I give Ron Rivera credit on this, is that he listens to Bieniemy's input. For example, they're going to change their practice times for training camp. I don't know the exact practice time they're going to have, but in the past it would be 9 a.m. Why? Because it was the first thing they did. They'd have a meeting the night before, they go from that, they break, and they go into their practice first thing in the morning. So you take the meeting and then you sleep, recharge, go out to practice. Well, now what they're going to do is they're going to start with a meeting and then they're going to go into practice. And the reason is, and this was Bieniemy's suggestion, is my understanding, because you have a young quarterback learning a new offense. So he wanted to make sure that he can take what he learns in the classroom and then go out to the field. And he felt like it would hasten the certainly improve or help the progress of Howell and the offense. But I think that's why they want to do it. And Rivera agreed to change because, you get some coaches are reluctant to change. I think over the last year, we've seen more change from Rivera, getting rid of Sam Mills, getting rid of Scott Turner, two guys that have been with him for a while, but he knows that I have one of my former coaches that I covered, Mark Jorman, who coaches baseball at Madison High School, wildly successful high school coach, but his phrase was always, you always do what you always done, you always get what you always got. So I think part of what Rivera has done this offseason in terms of his staff is he shook things up. And then the biggest shakeup clearly was on offense. And he's listening. Again, he's taking the input from Bieniemy. That was a big change. And I know, like, schematically, it may not seem like a monstrous change, I don't think, but it's the terminology that's always the adjustment for players, and especially for a young quarterback. So there was a change, and Rivera could have gone a safer route with a Pat Shermer or someone like that, who has more of experience in this offense, to keep things the same for Howell. But Rivera's, eventually you get to the point, say, if you're going to change, you may as well change and get the guy you want, not the guy you think you need to settle for. So that's what they did. And I think you're also going to see, like, when the coaching titles get shaken out, I think you'll eventually see, like, Juan Castillo be a run game coordinator and maybe somebody else elevated to the day-to-day operations with the tight end, coaching of the tight ends. It's like Travell Wharton eventually will be named the O-line coach, but that's, again, some of those moves will take place once they get the ownership situation settled. But that staff is here. But there's Ken Zampese has a different role. You bring in a Tavita Pritchard to be a quarterback's coach. So they did shake things up a little bit. Now it has to work. It has to work. And a lot of it's going to rest on Howell. And the beauty of it is we can all have our guesses about what he's going to do. And you can have your absolute faith that he's going to be a good quarterback for them, because who can tell you otherwise right now? We don't know. And the beauty of it is we'll see it on the field. It'll be settled on the field. But it starts with, I think the big change was with Bieniemy and the energy he brings and all the other issues, factors that I just talked about. I think those are things that you can't underestimate. Has to play out on the field. I'm going to stress that, because you're playing a good schedule, and then you're going to have an adjustment to a new offense, to new terminology. And with a young quarterback, that often leads to an early bumps in the road. That's why that defense has to really kind of kick it into action early on, and that running game has to be good early on as well. But that defense especially has to really kind of show up early in the season so the offense can kind of work its way into what it can be. Anyway, that's it from me. So here's my conversation with Washington Commanders coach Ron Rivera.
The adventure park is ziplining through the trees. It's climbing from platform to platform. It's even an axe throwing competition with your friends. But what the adventure park really is opportunity. Reconnecting with friends and family, accomplishing a challenge, and making lasting memories. So book your visit today and choose your own adventure.
You kind of covered a lot of things. So, but the one thing I want to get with Sam, digging a little bit deeper. Some of you talk about some of the growth. Do you remember specific times when you saw that growth, like specific plays or moments?
We'd be in practice, and the first thing you would hear from the defensive guys is, I was trying to make that play, I just couldn't get to the ball.
Really?
I mean, and it's that old saying that players know players.
Right.
And so as you listen to them talk about, God, his ball was so catchable. Man, he threw that to the only spot. So then you go back and you watch it in practice. I mean, you watch it in film after practice, and the one thing that we should have done, and we can still do it, but while I was going through it, one of the things I should have done was I should have just started compiling all the clips of all of his throws. I mean, we can do it now,
right?
And as we go back and review it, and I know that's that you can have a real good library of his throws,
right?
I mean, his deep balls, the accuracy in which you started to really see it come along. Now, a lot of those things were off the cards.
Okay.
But when we got in that stretch where he was the number 2, dressing every week, and you really watch those throws. Okay, you watch those reps that he got, and
the show team.
Yes. No. When he was when he was the backup.
Gotcha. Oh, okay. The first team rep. Okay.
Right. One of the things that was done was we had a specific period where he took the whole period. Gotcha. We had a specific period where he would take a few snaps, and so he got to get those extra snaps.
Okay.
And that's when you really got to see it. And now that stuff was against the carded defense. Now, when he was doing the show team, is where you saw the throws that because it's one of those things that you sit there as a coach and say, well, I want the defense to make this, to play this specific route. Well, if they're playing a specific route and there's a specific combination, well, in their mind's eye, they know what's coming on defense. But yet he still made the throw. And that's what was impressive.
And then in the game, you talk about, like, I remember, the interception. He came right over and said, you knew this. Were there other examples like that in the game where it's like, whether it was a quick decision based on what he saw?
Yes.
That highlights, do you remember some of those?
Yes. Well, the biggest one, or not the biggest one, but a couple of the bigger ones being what he did when he saw, when he hit Jahan on the shallow crosses a couple times. He hit him quickly. He got the ball out right between defenders, and the plays were made. The throw on Terry for the touchdown was about as good as it gets. I mean, just
why was that? Because the timing of it?
It's the timing of it, because he knew he had a choice option for Terry. All he had to do was shake the guy and get past him, and he hit him in stride. So where Terry never had it, there was never any stutter. Just keep running right through it.
Was that something he reads at the line, or is it something that he's just like, that's the call?
It's something you read at the line, because you sit there and you say, okay, what? Oh, we got man coverage here. Okay, well, what they dropped it, and the hole player, the shallow hole player, we call it the rat, or what are you going to call it? He turns, and he now absorbs Terry, and his defender stops, and now he's the hole player. Well, all Terry had to shake the guy and win, and it's one of those things that you see as it either develops or you see it pre-snap, and he got a good pre-snap on it.
The other thing that I'd hear about him before the draft, you guys talked a lot about footwork, and that was a concern, I think, of some teams.
Yes, that's one thing we talked about too, though.
Right.
Because when you saw it, because of his quick twitch and his ability to get the ball out, in some of those things he gets lazy. Well, we saw it in the Baltimore preseason game when, instead of taking his quick shuffle to make it a 5-step drop, he just kind of took the ball. He took the snap, and so from where he takes the snap, it's not a 5-step drop.
Right.
Well, this particular route combination calls for the 5-step drop. So if you take the snap and you just shuffle your feet, and now you're throwing, you didn't get any deep.
Right.
What happens on that part is if I take the snap, okay, I'm taking the snap, and I shuffle my feet. So I get the snap, I shuffle my feet. Now I'm at the 5-step position I need to be. Well, that's part of the timing in the route.
Okay.
See, because if I don't take that step, those steps, there's no timing and space between me and the receiver as far as the route's concerned. I'm not letting the route unfold before I take my eyes and I put my eyes on it.
Okay.
What I may do is I may take that snap, whip my eyes over there, and guess what? My eyes are already there. I'm just waiting for him to come clear. Now what happens? The defender gets to read where I'm throwing the ball, and now he's breaking him. You see what happens on it?
Yep.
And that was the concern, one of the things that I worried about. Well, so now in the Baltimore game, you see it, he just shuffles his feet. So you see him clearly looking where he wants to throw it, but the problem also is there's no time and space for the pass rush. So what's happening is, and it happened to Chris Paul. Chris Paul's fighting this guy here, and he's begrudgingly giving ground, but guess what? If he doesn't move, right, and I keep pushing as a pass rusher, and I keep pushing, and he hasn't gotten that extra 2 yard depth, what happens? He's in his lap, and that's where couple of those sacks came. And that's what I was talking about.
Okay. And that's how did he correct all that? Because
just through practice, just through Kenny working with him and explaining to him, hey, got to get your depth. This is why. There's time and space that's involved as far as routes are being run and protection.
So the last thing you can tip it. But the last thing I want to ask you about is about the ownership stuff, and just more so, like, again, what you learned, and anything specifically, like, is it about, do you almost treat it like it's another job interview?
It is, because it's all about presentation and about what you do going forward, understanding the reasons of why you did things. One of the things that I kind of wish I had done a little bit more is gone through what I had previously gone through with my ownership in Carolina, so that the new ownership understood why we did the things we did. So I'll be very clear about, hey, my first 3 years, these were the things that we wanted to do. Well, what happened this year? This year, I made decisions to do certain things. I made a decision. These are why I made decisions to change my coordinator. These are the decisions that we're doing right now, and this is what we really feel is that this opportunity to roster build. Okay, pure roster build, saying this is about going forward. This is not about now. I don't even think I'm trying to do anything because I'm desperate. I'm doing things the right way, okay? Because at the end of the day, if they're not happy and they want to let me go, great. But at least the roster is in the position that if you come in with this philosophy saying, we got to build what we got right now, the quarterback is the right guy, the running game is in place, and we got 5 playmakers. Okay, and when I say that, I'm talking about 3 wide receivers, a tight end, and a running back. Those are your 5 playmakers on the field at a time. You can feel good that this team is going forward. That's what I'm doing. Okay, I'm not worried about what the decision is after a year. What I'm worried about is making sure that this roster is being built, it's in place, and if I leave it in a good position.
Thanks, Ron. Appreciate it. That's it for this episode. Thanks to Ron Rivera for joining me, and thank you, as always, for tuning in. Like I said, I'll be back on Friday wrapping up what we saw at the Commanders rookie minicamp. I'll talk to you next time.